Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1487 of our daily content grind. So before we get into today's topic, I'm going to be very quick and be a little bit selfish here. Does everyone mind just doing me like less than 10 seconds of effort? All you have to do is click like on one tweet for me. That's all you have to do. And you'll find the link to said tweet in the description below. Quick little explanation. Iron Mouse is doing another one of her VTuber fashion show things, and it would be a huge boost for my new project if it actually appears on her stream. However, there's also like 3,200 replies right now, and some of them have hundreds of likes on them, which is going to push them higher up the queue. The best chance I have of actually being noticed and getting that kind of recognition is going to be if there's as many likes on the post as possible. So that's all you have to do. Go to the description, click the link, and click like. That's it. And I know asking people to go onto Twitter for like 5 seconds really is a lot. It's more than I ask of you anymore, you would notice. But it would mean a lot to me. Just a little bit of effort that could go miles for me. I thank you very much for that. Okay, so that's enough of the shameless self-promotion and ballot box stuffing. Let's get to the topic of the day, because this is something that came up yesterday on the news roundup, and it's something that I just can't get off my mind. I wasn't intending to make this today's video, but hey, here we are. Let's go for it. So this is probably going to be the last time we speak of Haslab Omega Prime on this channel, unless something like weird or catastrophic or something happens, because it seems to be the entire ordeal is finally over. So I thought this would be a good time to kind of go back, give all the thoughts on everything that transpired across the entirety of the Haslab campaign, and kind of show just how far this ride became like possibly the most controversial Haslab release ever, which is ironic because it's also one of the most successful ones. We will get to that in a minute as well. But we will start at the beginning of this entire show, which is the chaos that came about of the overall announcement. See, we were under the impression that Optimus Primes would never be a Haslab feature because Optimus Primes never have trouble selling. So why would you put one in Haslab? So this was something Evan had told us previously, that Optimus Primes would not be Haslab projects. So upon the announcement of Omega Prime, you had a lot of people getting really confused. Evan later clarifies that this was just him assuming things. It's not a solid rule. I mostly believe that, but it is also very likely that it was a solid rule until they realized what they could do with a Haslab Omega, and then just decide, you know what, it's probably best to go that way anyway. But nevertheless, it does lead to a lot of controversy because it's an Optimus Prime, and it's a unique and popular Optimus Prime design. Why are you going to shut it off behind Haslab, which does make it time limited and cost prohibitive? This is an expensive toy, and you have a limited time frame to actually be able to afford said toy. So it set off a lot of people who were really hoping it would be released as a normal retail toy. A lot of people pointing to the Armada Commander Optimus Prime of, well, it's basically the original toy, just a lot better. It has a lot more like transformation elements. It's definitely more complex. And okay, fine. Now, I will say, having the toy in hand, in fact, I'm touching it right now, I will say it's far more complex than a Commander would have allowed. And this was before we had smaller Titan class figures, so this was not an option at the time. But for me, I would say this sits somewhere between the Commander Armada Optimus Prime and the Titan Star Optimus Prime. It's definitely more complex than either. I will give him that. And that's kind of what became clear to me as the campaign went on, and why I started pushing back against the idea of Optimus Prime and Ultra Magnus being released as Commander class toys. Because the more we saw of them, the more it became very clear that these were far more complicated than the original figures were, and there's a lot more going on in the engineering that a normal retail budget toy could handle. We had been told in the past things end up in Haslab because it's the only place to fully realize them and do everything that fans are going to want those toys to do. So to have them at retail, there is going to be limitations. In the case of Haslab Omega Prime, a lot of the limitations came down to Magnus has to be big enough to store 3 Autobot cars in vehicle mode. That dictates the size. But also to get animation accuracy in there and to improve into modern articulation, a lot more engineering has to be involved. And I will say, like, especially when you combine to Omega Prime, there's a lot going on to make sure he's still got ankle articulation. And even like Super Optimus Prime, I could say the same. So yeah, like we wouldn't find out until we had it in hand, but it always felt like to me, as they were showing these off, we really were getting our money's worth. This really was an incredibly complex toy that at retail would not have worked. And while I have no doubt Optimus Prime would have sold in whatever form you put him out in, that design of Ultra Magnus would not have gone over well. I genuinely do not feel like selling that toy on its own would have been successful. So, and we've talked about that with Commander Class in the past. Because Commander Class toys almost never get repaints, they have to get all their money worth in one run. So to risk it on a figure that is likely not going to sell well in its first run, yeah, that would be a huge risk. And I don't think they were ready to take that risk, and I wasn't either, because this turned out to be a really, really good set. And overall, I thought eventually became worth the price, and we'll get into that in a minute. This came with another complaint, or another like campaign against this Haslab toy, was just go buy the original. You know, with how expensive this thing is, like just go buy the original, go buy the reissue. We just had a reissue of this one a few years ago. People forgetting that the reissue had a ton of QC issues with it. Wow, it's almost prophetic in a weird way. Point being, you really don't want to go buy the original either. Not only because you're going to have like issues like the rotting tires, and like the yellowing on the Ultra Magnus, but just in general, the newer toy is going to provide a lot more play value than the original did. The original is still a fantastic toy, don't get me wrong, but it is definitely not doing as much as this particular version of it does. For me, I was upset that it was going to be a Haslab because it cut us out from so many potential repaints. You know, Yellow Splendid Convoy has been growing in popularity in the fandom thanks to the Takara Legends comic books. And then for me, we got snubbed on the black and gold repaint of these two, which is an absolutely gorgeous figure, and I would have loved to have had a modern version. Haslabs to date have never been repainted. So this is probably never going to happen, and it's disappointing. Disappointing to say the least. Now, like I said, I do think we eventually got our money's worth out of this campaign. So for $250, you were getting 2 toys that were above Commander Class in both size and complexity. You were getting a ton of accessories that absolutely would not have made it in. Okay, say what you want about the display bases all these Haslabs eventually have. I mean, at least there's no effect parts in this one, right? But the bases do always seem to be just like fluff. You know, just like a little bit extra just to kind of up the price a little bit. They're always stretch goals, not worthwhile ones, but, you know, it does add to the value of the package, you know, especially if you are putting it on a surface where like my desk, if I were to put my Haslabs across the top of my desk, this desk is a little bit wobbly, you know, so maybe I don't trust just their normal feet. Maybe I want them to stand up a little bit better. So yeah, there's actually a good reason to have the stands. But yeah, you're getting like the sword. The sword is never going to make it into a retail product. Absolutely not. And then they went and turned Ultra Magnus's big weapon into Blue Bolt, a brand new character. We're vaguely based on the Beast Wars character done up in the Black Lio Convoy Masterpiece release. Yeah, we actually got another one, and weirdly enough, it's another opportunity to throw a she into Transformers. Funny enough. So we got a whole other figure out of this. And, basically a brand new weaponizer. So now, like you were talking about, two plus commanders, plus a deluxe, plus your display bases, plus the huge sword. You see where, like, yeah, this is a huge chunk of money all at once, but overall, you are seeing where you're getting up to a $250 price. I genuinely believe at retail, it would have cost exactly the same. So, that said, despite the controversy, despite everyone whining, basically, to just go back and buy the original, and everyone who wanted to complain about an Optimus being put in this, 45-day window and exorbitant price point, it still manages to finish as the most successful Transformers Haslab of all time, and came within just a couple thousand of being the single most successful Transformer Haslab campaign of all time. It is the fastest to reach 50% funding in just a day. It was the fastest to reach 100% funding in just 10 days. And it's the highest number of backers for a Transformer release. This thing did amazing. Despite all of the complaints, despite all of the drama and controversy everyone tried to drum up, this thing was absolutely successful. And genuinely, I do not think when you're putting it out at normal retail, that was ever going to happen, especially with how much smaller, less complex, and less rich in accessories it was going to be. Yes, it would have been more affordable and easier to get. It also would have been about, I don't know, maybe 60-70% of what we actually got. It would have been diminished. Let's put it that way. It would have definitely been diminished, and it wouldn't have done everything you really wanted it to. Now, we wait the normal Haslab amount of time, right? So through all of that and through all of the usual complaining about, Haslab as a concept in general, like it or not, it is something that normal toy lines and companies have done all the time, have done for decades. This really isn't anything new. It's just new for Hasbro is all. So, that's how that goes. But we wait the Haslab amount of time for this toy to get production, and then we get it shipped off, and, come springtime this year, people start getting it in hand, and oh my god. So everyone who was messing with it said that, yeah, this might be the best Haslab offering there ever was. So you got your figures exactly the way you wanted them. Like, the articulation is fantastic, way improved over the originals. You can see the fire convoy is noticeably much larger than the original. And then detail-wise, paint-wise, everything is kept much more close to the show. And that is also really, really important on a collector's piece. So all in all, like, they did what they set out to do. They produced this ultimate version of a very fan-favorite Optimus Prime design. And yeah, like, again, like, it seemed like it was going really well. And then the photos started coming up. As it turns out, these now infamous cracks became a widespread issue amongst these fire convoys, Omega Primes, whatever you want to call them. We don't know exactly why. So, we do. So, this just became commonplace. And the more days that went on, the more people who got their Haslab projects in, the more people posting pictures of cracked bellies on Optimus Prime. I did it too. Mine came in cracked. Mine came cracked and leaking lubricants, quite literally. And the people who opened it up discovered even more damage was happening internally. The teeth that were supposed to provide friction on the slide joint for his transformation are all busted in because, well, what we've come to find out, inside there is this gray T-block that is supposed to be like what creates the friction between there, and it's the basis of the slide joint. It's too big, just by a little bit, but it's big enough to wedge in there, but trying to force it up and down and trying to transform the torso with it, it starts cracking the belly just by the pressure alone. It starts cracking the belly. I didn't transform mine. I got it out of the box and I transformed it enough to actually reveal the belly of Optimus Prime, but I did not compress it. I did not slide it down. All I did was unfold the vehicle mode. And yeah, mine was cracked along the belly. And that's purely just pressure over time. Same way translucent plastic breaks, except in this case, it's just because the plastic is just too thin and too flimsy in those areas. And then the Ultra Magnets could also have the familiar yellowing problem. I thought we were done with this. I thought Hasbro had actually figured out how to avoid this from now on. And yet here, on one of the most expensive releases that they could do, and in one of the most limited toys that you can't just go out to the store and buy a brand new one, this is a critical problem to have. This is dramatically bad. So we start contacting Hasbro in droves, and at first, they really weren't sure how to handle it. The first emails that came back told us, well, send it in, and that way we get to inspect it and see if this is a widespread problem. Spoiler alert, it's a widespread problem. But the narrative changed pretty quickly. As the number of complaints and emails came in, the story changed from, send us your toy so that we can inspect it and fix it. And then it became, hold on to your toy, we need to figure something out. And that's where Hasbro left us in the dark for months and months on end without giving us any explanation. The reality is, they knew this was a widespread problem, but in order to figure out how to properly address such a huge problem, they had to make sure they had all of them accounted for. So all of the Haslab Omega Primes had to be shipped out in hand, and then wait for all the emails to come in and wait for them to calm down to get some idea of how many replacements they were going to be needing. It's a huge process. It's a huge thing. But instead of just elaborating on that, instead of just explaining, hey, we need a full account of all of this, they stayed quiet. And that's the worst thing a company can do, is stay quiet about something that's going on, especially when it's a really bad, really upsetting problem. This is one of your premium toys. There shouldn't have been a single fault in this, and yet there are numerous. This isn't even getting into the tolerance issues on Ultra Magnus's wings. This isn't getting into any kind of, I know there was also joints on his legs that were like causing stress marks, things like that. This wasn't even getting into all those. So it's a very problematic release, and we're just kind of sitting on our thumbs, just waiting for Hasbro to tell us, like, how are you actually going to fix this? And it took them way too long. In the meantime, we started figuring out how to actually fix this ourselves. Turns out, if you open it up and just sand down the sides of that T-block, you are going to basically do all the fixing that it is required. It'll slide much smoother. It won't break anything anymore. Like, it will actually work the way it's supposed to work, and everyone can be happy, right? But the problem with that was we didn't know how Hasbro was going to address the problem. Yeah, they could have just sent us like a full replacement figure, which would be crazy expensive. They could have just sent us the parts to replace it, in which case you didn't know which parts they were going to replace, meaning that you might sand down that T-block and just get like the front belly portion in the mail instead, meaning that your new T-block is now going to go into this remolded belly, and everything's going to be way too loose now. So my recommendation was, don't do anything until we had a proper fix. It took too long. It took way too long for Hasbro to tell us exactly what they were going to do. And we really didn't find out until we started getting emails back in July. Keep in mind, this thing came out in like March. There was speculation that Hasbro tried to rush it out to beat the tariffs. But for as long as I could tell, because like this was supposed to be like a summer release, maybe fall release, if I remember, like it came out extremely fast. It came out extremely fast. Yeah, estimated shipping fall 2025. We were supposed to be getting these toys now. We got them like March. We got them crazy early. So there's a lot of speculation that they were rushed out of the factory. That might have had something to do with it. But back in July, we finally started finding out that they were just going to send replacement figures. Now, I'm not going to knock Hasbro on this, because that's exactly what they did. Over the last few days, people who sent in their messages to Hasbro have started reporting that, yeah, we're just getting these full brand new Optimus Prime cabs to fix the problem. And if you complained about your white Ultra Magnus starting to yellow right out of the box, good news. They sent complete replacements for the Ultra Magnus as well. Bravo. You know, this is the most expensive fix Hasbro could have done, especially on the Ultra Magnus side. You know, it would have been something to just send us the replacement parts, but knowing that tariffs are a thing and that this would have been a no profit run of toys, to basically reproduce half of each figure for the sake of fixing it for fans, I'm not going to understate this. I am not going to take away any credit. It's probably the most expensive option available to them on the table, but it was also the most surefire one. This way you're not sending instructions. You're not asking someone who isn't comfortable with, like disassembling a toy to basically perform surgery on a $250 piece of plastic. So honestly, kudos to Hasbro. This is the best way you could have gone about this. But it wouldn't be the Haslab Omega Prime if even this didn't have some problem to it. So as it turns out, they just did the same thing. They reran the toy, but instead of recasting it and instead of fixing the tooling or producing like a new T block to swap it out with, they basically just made the same fixes that we made. Cut down a nub here, sand down the sides there, and then got us the exact same result. So basically, if you didn't have cracks on your Optimus Prime and you found out about this toy's problems, opened it up, sanded the block down yourself, and then reassembled it, you basically have exactly what I have now. Though there's also the potential that it's not sanded well enough. You know, clearly from this photo, it's kind of an amateur hour job of sanding down the plastic. But also, if they didn't get the tolerances right, it could still be too tight. Maybe not tight enough to start breaking things, but still uncomfortable. So it's not the best of fixes. It's weird that Hasbro would take the most expensive route toward fixing this by sending completely new replacement figures, but also disappointing because it is such a lazy way of going about the actual fix. Though, thanks to Hasbro's error, a lot of us can now have a pretty wild display on our shelves as we have both a Haslab Super Optimus Prime and a Haslab Omega Prime side by side, which is kind of fun. Kind of a fun way to go about it. But that seems to be the end of this whole sordid affair. This has such a black eye on Haslab that it's not only the fact that, like, it's a controversial choice to begin with, it's incredibly marred upon its arrival despite how much money it brought in. And now the fix seems to be both expensive and cheaped out at the same time. This is a mess. This entire situation has been a mess, and it's something that puts Haslab in such a dark light because we're now all waiting for our Lio Kaisers and fingers crossed praying to whatever you believe in that it's actually going to come in intact and not breaking itself. We can only hope. If there is even a single problem with Lio Kaiser, I sincerely believe this is why we have no announcement of a new Haslab yet. If there is even a single problem with that Lio Kaiser, Haslab is done. At least on the Transformer side of things, I think you're just going to lose too much faith to get another project out there unless this one that we're waiting on now comes out flawless. So that's where we stand now, and this is probably the last time we're going to talk of this toy in general. So there you go. Let me know how your experience with Omega Prime went, and if you got a replacement, if you had yours broken. This is kind of our last chance to kind of coalesce and be frustrated over this together. So thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.